Hi.
Hi,
I don't know
can you
how.
hear me? Yes,
In the YouTube is being heard okay as well. I don't know if you could check or ask maybe the students.
yes, we can hear you in the
In
YouTube
both.
as
Okay,
well.
perfect, perfect. So I'll just talk with both things, hoping it's better. Um, well, the video that you saw, I'm going to do a small, say again, demo. It's basically the same thing that you've heard. Um, I'm going to, well, maybe it would be, I don't know, I'll probably have to mute the sound from YouTube, from my voice, while I'm playing, because it could overlap, I don't know, or maybe could, produce some feedback. Well, first of all, thank you, Paul, for being here. I'm Paola Torres. I do various things, as you can see, some of my artworks. I'm also a painter, and mainly a painter, I would say. Mainly, even if I don't paint that much anymore. Even though recently it has happened something curious to me. The more that I've worked, the more I got immersed into sound, the more I have the craving to paint. So I now these recent paintings that I've been developing, they also have a component that is linked to the digital, even if this is not that obvious. Um, but mainly for this talk, I would focus on the sound. I mean, the sound aspect of my work, and that related to AI as well, which is something recent that I've started working on, especially last year. And I will, I will start by doing this little demo, and then explain the connection with this demo and the sounds produced, the sort of sounds that are being developed, and the reason why. Maybe I can, if you're interested in knowing more about my sound works, I can pass some links afterwards. Recently, my work has appeared in a compilation of experimental music from Peru, which I think is a very interesting record, with a very, very, say, like original selection of Peruvian artists. And that for me, it's quite surprising. I think the reception of my sound works, it's something that yeah, it's very new for me. I don't know how to manage it quite well, in the sense that, of course, I don't consider myself a musician, mainly because I don't play instruments. I think that this, what you've seen in the video, and these devices that you see now, that maybe because of the light, I'll move the camera later on, so you can see them. But it's two of the three devices that you saw in these textile controllers that you saw in the video. Um, I I think that my interest in sound got to be so strong that I had to overcome my own limits. My limits, not being able to play any instrument properly, by creating my own instruments. I work a lot with the human voice recordings, related to AI, or to the methods I use in machine learning. It's also related to human voice, to generating a synthetic voice, and also for my sound pieces, I use field recordings. So I mix these two, I would say, these two kind of samples with, but that usually I distort or link to noise, and I am very interested in the passing in between harmony and complete distortion. This has, of course, a lot of symbolic meaning for me. Um, it could be, maybe, if you're interested, I can explain a bit more afterwards, on what it relates to this symbolic meaning between these two extremes, let's say. Um, but but yeah, all of these. Well, maybe it would be interesting for me to do a small demo and then explain what's going on. Um, Please tell me if there's any feedback. Uh, I'll leave the microphone from the phone on, and if there's any feedback, you tell me, and I just turn it off.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Yes, I will let you know.
Okay, I'll set this up then. Are you able to listen to this?
Yes. Yes, we hear.
And is there a problem with my voice in any? There is any feedback in the YouTube because I'm leaving the microphone open so to be able to talk. Is there any problems or it's fine?
No, I hear you. I hear you okay.
In YouTube as well.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear.
Okay.
We hear the sound and your voice.
Okay, perfect. So then I leave it like this, so I can talk.
I think just one thing for me, there's about a 10-second delay between the YouTube and the Zoom. That's just me.
Yeah, there's a delay. I think we can. I think maybe we have to choose. If you want, maybe check the YouTube and maybe close this one. I
Yeah.
can't because I have to talk to Paula, but maybe just look the YouTube one, and then that will be
Yeah,
synchronized.
I think that's better as well. And if you have any problems, just come back to Zoom and tell me. I'm having some problems with the YouTube, and then I try to fix that because it's problematic for me as well since I have to control so many things. So maybe I make some mistake at some point. So it will be good to know. Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay, so I'll explain what's going on. In this case, um, this device, and I call them textile controllers because basically what they do, well, in the case of the Kipu, it's an independent system. I'm using a Raspberry Pi. In the case of the, I maybe need to explain what a Kipu is. I reference, let's say my whole like exploration at this point in my artistic career has to do with questioning the given history of technology and the arts. At this point, I think the origin of of the word of, say, like, as you know, art comes from the term ars, and then technique or technology is related to the word techne, which actually mean the same thing. One in Latin, another one in Greek. Um, so it's curious because by now, in the arena of the art and sciences and all of these, we can say that it has become one again. So I'm interested in this, and I think this point in history it's relevant to sort of question this history, that we've given, that we take as a given, that history is linear, and the history of arts is one, and the history of technology is one. But there have been branches in what relates to human technology that one could say have cut short, no? Because usually when we're being taught about history, especially what it has to do with code and to writing language, we are being taught that in Mesopotamia, the cuneiform system was the first writing system. It was done on clay tablets. Before that, on say like rocks or stone was served as support to carve certain symbols or paintings as well, and then paper came and so on and so on. But what happened in South America, it's particular in the sense that it seems that the preferred way to store the information by the inhabitants in South America was, especially in the Andean region, was textile. So even though we can't say that we found books, or in any case, we need to go and question our own idea of what books are, or what we keep on. One can say like we keep on trying to find our own, say like Western view of things. No, okay, let's find this textile book. Well, there's nothing like that, but there are these devices, these string-based devices called quipus, that were used actually by pre-Columbian people, not just the Inca, which is the most known culture, but apparently more than 2,000 years ago, but by other cultures. Know that it's in principle a very simple system that just consists of tying knots on strings. This seems to be actually, not only in South America you find these kind of devices. It seems to have appeared, again, it seems to be a development in technology that is not talked much about, but it happened as well and in China, and I think also in other areas of the Pacific Ocean. So there's even a myth. The kanji system is the system that is used, the symbols that are used in Chinese writing. But there's a myth on how kanji came up with this system. That basically is something that he was asked by the emperor asked him to come up with a system, and then he went to the Yellow River and saw how the birds stepped on the humid grounds, and then from these these blueprints, he came out with writing, no? But before that, says like this, no? The emperor told him to go and look for another, to come up with another writing system, because the writing system of the notes in chords wasn't as efficient, or something like that. So that's interesting. Once you dig a bit more in Chinese culture, you come out, you realize that yes, that they also had a notation system with strings, which it's not exactly the same as what we conceive as kipu, but it's guided by the same principle, no? So I'm interested in this. I'm interested in this, in the development of technology by humanity, and this device has been has gotten some popularity recently, because there are many artists, actually since the start of the 20th century, but that's not that known, that are working around this concept of a kipu, no? And what is captivating from this device is that it hasn't been fully decoded. So there's some researchers postulate the idea that actually it could be a writing system, and that there's these stories as well that you mentioned the fact that there were some songs recorded in these devices, no? So I come out from that idea, no? From the idea that the play around the possibility that actually voice in some way could be inscribed in this in the quipus. So actually, for this device, I recorded. It actually allows me to reinterpret a polyphonic composition from the 1600s that I was interested in, because it's in essence syncretic. I would say all of my work is basically syncretic, no? But it's the first. It's particularly interesting because this is a Baroque composition, in Baroque style, European style. It was written by a priest. It was a Spaniard that came to Peru, that was interested in turning into the Catholic religion, the local inhabitants. So he wrote this composition for voice, and it's actually an ode. It's for the Virgin Mary, but it's all written in Quechua, and Quechua is the native, the main language used by Inca Empire, you know, still used in Peru by Andean inhabitants. So I thought that was a very interesting composition, that it portrayed what syncretism is. And the composition is Hana Pacha Kusikunin, that's the name of the composition. So this piece is actually called, I just called it Hana Pacha Kipu, because it just allows me to play clips or samples of the first strophe of this polyphonic composition. In the case of this device, it's based on a community, on the designs of a community in the Peruvian Amazon. This community is called the Chipibo Conibo, and they're very popular right now because a lot of tourists visit the area interested in the ayahuasca experience. No? So they play a lot with this synesthetic experience related to the psychedelic experience. No? So it has been speculated that these designs could be sung. So some researchers propose the idea that actually works some sort of like a musical notation system, whereas others, all of this going within the Western discourse, actually proposed that no, that this was sort of a trick or something that they come up with later to be able to sell their designs. I did a personal research on the subject, and my personal conclusion is that it seemed that actually what was being sung was the myth behind. So it doesn't exactly work as our idea of musical notation, but it's definitely linked to sound. So then usually I use this third piece as well. I haven't used it for the demo because my table is too small, but I can explain a bit about the mechanisms behind this. No, so in here we can see this. In the case of these two small textiles, I use these Arduino style microcontrollers. This is a Flora, and in this case I use a special textile that I program it so it can work as a potentiometer, no? In the sense that if you stretch it or leave it as it is, it changes its voltage, no? It changes voltage that you're passing through, let's say. So it allows you to change. I mean, what I do is I map this change in voltages towards numbers. Then with the small Arduino style microcontroller, in this case it's a Flora from Adafruit, I program it so the computer reads it as numbers. So it reads it like a continuous flow of numbers that allows me to link a sound, or when in this case a degree of distortion. Let's say that's something that you could see in the video. In the case of this other textile, the Chipivo con Ivo style textile, the mechanism is closer to that of the Kipu, no? In this sense, I have conductive thread, which I programmed the Arduino style. In this case, is a lily pad, so it reads also the changes in voltage as numbers, and depending on the numbers and the area that I'm playing within the textile, I connect it to certain samples. No? These recordings are made of, I made them in the Peruvian Amazon, and the voice that you hear is that of Auristela Brito, that it's a Chipio con Ivo singer, that I work with her in various projects. No? In the case of the Kipu, going back to the Kipu, the system is similar. In this case, I'm using a Raspberry Pi with a, it can omit the, you see, there's the Raspberry Pi, and I've used a little interface that it's so to in this case I don't need the Arduino, no, because this device just saves a step and allows me to use it as capacitive sense immediately. So in the case of the Kipu, I'm actually using in the case of the Kipu, I use Python as programming language, and that way I link it to the samples. In the case of the Chipivo con Ivo textile, I'm using it to send this data to PD, or pure data. I don't know if you know this software. I guess you do. And in the case of the Ucuña of noise, which is what applies noise on these two other devices, as you saw in the video, actually, use PD to generate this noise, no, and distort more or less depending if I pull it or leave it as it is. So I don't know if you have any questions at this point. If not, I can pass towards the next, show you a video that talks a bit about the relationship of this and AI.
Okay, let me ask if they have any questions.
Yeah.
And
then we can continue, if that's okay.
Yeah, and the people who are watching, maybe you can tell them if they want to join the Zoom. They already have the link.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. If you want to ask some questions directly right now, you can join the Zoom. If you prefer to ask the questions afterwards, I can get to the next part of this stop, and it depends on what you prefer.
Yeah, I think let's leave that. Let's leave some time for them to join. So if you want, you can go to the next part, and then we can come back to the
Okay,
question.
perfect. I'll do that. And I'll just, I need to stand up and change it manually because yeah, okay, I'll come back.
La artista Paula Torres, Núñez del Prado, ha trabajado con sonido y textiles desde el 2007. Y diseñando interfaces textiles que emergieron de la galería de arte para acabar como parte de performances sonoras. Es así que entre las voces que cantan desde los tejidos he nacido yo, son de una inteligencia artificial que compone y recita poemas, y que ahora presento mi primer álbum poemario llamado El tiempo del hombre. Ciencia oye al sol del cielo y a todo de ciencia, al que se me abandona. Lo más apresumo que no es más difícil.
So I started from this idea of song relating to voice, but also to speak the truth or exposing something that is not that obvious. Inserting silenced voices back onto the text.
¿Qué se hizo después de terminada la asamblea todavía?
Using machine learning methods in my artistic practice is not a way to separate from the human. On the contrary, continuing with my research regarding the history of technology and the arts within a contemporary framework, one in which arts and techne is becoming one again, I place my artistic practice in a historical context that is presented as linear when, in reality, it is not. One starting with the Kipu, that and then device regaining popularity thanks to institutions such as Ars Electronica and the current interest of artists, I not only play with the possibility of alternative futures, where textile computers could have been the norm if this particular branching of human technology, one that is inclined towards the recording of information onto textiles and fibers rather than on paper or clay, could have been allowed to develop fully. But also recognizing that there is a rich branch in the modern arts, one could say of South American origin, that has referenced this captivating device since the early 20th century and has been largely omitted by mainstream Western discourse. In this line, algorithmic models trained on selected data reflect the same partialization. One could say that the particularity of the AI movement within the arts now is that the colonizing practices have started almost parallel to the application of these techniques in this realm. In many ways, it could be seen as a tool and a meta tool, where the algorithms that are supposed to reflect us correctly, so to help us, are taken as the medium that exposes how we are being deformed by the tool makers, as power is never missing in the tool making equation, or its application or preservation. Nevertheless, I want to go a step beyond, to find the ghost in the machine, so to harness it through error and syncretism, while meandering through the limits of translation, all of which I take as the basics of human experience.
En el tiempo del hombre, poemas sintéticos.
Were you able to see the video with no problems?
Yes, we saw it.
Okay.
And the sound was okay.
Yes, we are.
Okay, great. Well, it's a bit fast, the video. I did recently, actually, for yeah. Well, it was not precisely for this talk, but I thought that it will be interesting as an introduction for this, no? So I don't know if you could really get what's going on at first. It's you could hear the voice of a man that is actually introducing my work. That's the voice of Agelson. Who's Agelson, or what is Agelson? Agelson is an AI system that I created with the support of Google, actually. That it's a system that generates poetry, and actually that generates spoken words poetry, no? So it consists of two parts. One part that it's the portion of the neural network, well, a method of machine learning, we could say, that generates text. Maybe you've heard about this. It's rather popular, right? These systems that can generate text based on an input set of words that you write. It's the same system. It's called this one is called a GPT-2. It's called a generative pre-trained transformer. It's a type of model used, and this is a linguistic model, no? So what it does is that in this case I haven't seeded. It's called seeding, no? When you write some phrase and then the model, you know, the AI would say continues it. For the case of the text that is first generated in this system, I'm not seeding it, so I just allow the machine to come up with these poems. What it is, I trained this system, and this was at the end of 2019. Now there is one model that it's a bit more efficient. That is the GPT-3, that it has way more parameters. Now it is interesting because since it hasn't been properly trained yet in Spanish, the output is, I mean, when you can see the difference in the English language, especially for prose, maybe not that much for poems, and that's something that one could maybe study in literature, not that much related to sound. But in prose, the GPT-3 is better, but not in other languages, because it hasn't been trained with that much data yet from other languages. No, so let's say these models, their efficiency depends on the quantity of data you train them with. So in this case, what we did is we used the pre-trained transformer, this model that was already training a lot of data in English, and then we fine-tuned it, or we retrained it using that first data, first structures, let's say, as base, with the Spanish texts. And so it's interesting, know how language works, because in that way it picked up the structure of the Spanish language way faster. Whereas if we would have started from scratch, we would have required a lot of more data, no? So then what the system does is, okay, it first generates this text, and there's this other type of machine learning model. No, it's actually because it's with two from like two other ones internally. That's well, for the case of the record, we used one that is called Tacotron 2, mixed with another one that is way below. So one of them is like the encoder and the decoder one. Put it that way, no? And what it does is, like, one is the one that actually passes the text to voice, and then the other one actually gives it's the one that generates the voice itself, no? That allows you to train the voice to the style of voice, and with this I mean that you can train it even with your own voice, so it sounds like yourself. There is some page that I think does that in English, no? but in Spanish it's a bit more hard, and that's something that I wanted to point out with this project, no, that there's also a hierarchy. There's I mean, these systems need to be decolonized, no, because depending on the, I mean, most of these systems are already, let's say, ready to be used if you are speaking English, or even in some cases French, or even German, no? And that doesn't necessarily reflect the amount of people that are speaking that language in the human world, let's say. It just reflects who has the power or the means to access these models and train them, no? So in a way, it's interesting how algorithms, and this is again something that is discussed a lot, no, how they reflect our own human hierarchies, no. So for me, this record was also linked. I mean, coming up with this record, because what I did is like, okay, this system generated a set of poems, and these poems ended up being spoken by the same system. So I recorded them in a vinyl. I was very interested in the fact of turning the digital back to analog, and into a system that is so historically charged as well, such as the vinyl, and also because the vinyl, let's say, has this, say, it's very easy to map to the tactile experience and the visual, right? Because you can see the, how can I explain this? You can see the actual, my English language is failing right now. The actual lines, the actual shape of the sound in the physical device. So for me, it was a way to link it with the kipu as well, in the sense of the tactility, like doing a mapping in between the hand and the needle, no? The hand that touches this device, and the needle that is also touching the vinyl record. Why this male voice? This male voice is actually very similar, if not the same, for us humans sounds the same, of the Peruvian poet called Jorge Eduardo Eielson. I chose him, and actually, but the poetry though is not just him. It has been, it's not just his poetry, no. I've trained the model, the GPT-2, with my own poetry plus Cecilia Vicuña's poetry, which you could see her artwork in the video. She's also a South American artist that has worked extensively around the concept of the quipu. Jorge Eduardo Eielson, which was also a visual artist that was a pioneer as well with the subject of the quipu, to sort of and all of this mixed in this entity, including say Jorge Eduardo Eielson that worked in the 60s, Cecilia Vicuña worked around this subject in the 70s, and myself that has been working around these subjects since the early 2000s. And so I wanted to emphasize this sort of such strong, and the strong presence of the quipu and of this device, and the particular branching as well in the history of art, that of the South American art, that it's not really considered in mainstream history of art. So with this album, I wanted to sort of call attention to this as well. And of course, the album is connected as well with a piece that, or a set of works. They never really came to be, because I think the idea was that they were impossible. No, they're called sound sculptures, and they these sound sculptures were part of a larger project of sculptures that were impossible to make. So he made the instructions in a poetry style for this set of artworks, And the idea was that he would make these very ambitious artworks and bury them in different parts of the world. I don't think, I mean, they couldn't really be made, so no one allowed him to actually bury these artworks. But this was part of the concept, no? But I mean, once you see this idea of burying, of burial, it immediately evokes to what seems to be how we're being taught our own history in Latin America, no? That is very connected to the archaeological, that it's very connected to what we find buried. So as he used these references from pre-Columbian pre-Columbian cultures, he also was referencing to this act of burying. And so finally, this record, what I've done with it is, as you saw a little snippet as well, if there's still time, I can show you the video that I've recently put together related to this performance that I did very recently. It will be actually the first time that I show it in public. If you're interested, I can show it now. In which I actually bury this record as an archaeological remnant for the future. In such a way, someone in I don't know 100 years could bury this and could find, or maybe more, 1,000 years, no? Another human civilization could find this and actually find this voice in plastic and in this synthetic material, including a synthetic voice narrate or reciting synthetic poems as a reflection of our society, no? So based nowadays in the virtual or in the synthetic or in the artificial. And so yes, this could be in the sense of the sound. I decided to keep the errors. The wave glow system is quite unstable and it's a bit hard to manage. I mean, it's not. Don't imagine that the first thing that you write it would immediately sound perfect. Later on, I started using another system that it's a bit faster, but I thought that it was very nice the intonation that wave glow could capture, from the original train files. I used for training snippets of the voice of Jorge Eduardo Adelson, but since there wasn't enough of these voices available, we first trained it with a base of an Argentinian voice that is a data set used is available for training neural network models. So it's interesting because you can actually hear how one voice and one accent as well, because as the first voice was from Argentina, there's one accent that you can recognize, and then it passes to the other accent, to the other tone of voice that is that of a Peruvian person. And actually in the video, what you hear as background is the system learning how to speak. And that's quite interesting because at first, when you start the video, you hear it as if it would be actually the sound of the wind. But I haven't manipulated it. It's the way that it sounded. So it's interesting how machines learn to speak differently than humans, no? In the sense that a baby starts with cooing, it's goo goo dada, but in the machine it's like it starts with shh, and then words start taking shape. And I was very interested in this change, in this particularity of sound. So if there's still time, I could share this video. I don't know, how much time do we have?
Yes, no, this is super interesting. Well, at least for me. So yeah, please show it if you have time, and the students from this class also know that if they have to leave, they can leave.
Okay.
If they can stay, that would be great.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I'll show the video then, and we can start with the questions. Maybe there's some things that I have omitted that the questions will allow me also to be aware of.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, but I'll show the video then. And again, when you're watching the video, take notice of particular notice of the sound, because I think that's the most relevant thing of this sound, also of the video. What I've done in what relates to sound is simply I've used small clips. I mean, well, I was training when we were training the system. For this system, I need to share with you that the Holy Grim, which is a creative technologist of Navajo origin, she helped me with this is what I was forgetting. She helped me with the training and supported me because I actually started. I had only read and tried a bit about these neural deep learning methods, and thanks to Google, I got into this more, but it's one could say that the minds behind this album were two women, no, and the system actually I picked up the time of the name of the album is called The Time of Man, or El Tiempo del Hombre, no, in Spanish, and actually the system came up with this name, not for the album, no, but it was one of the strophes of one of the lines of this poem, and one of the verses, sorry, no, not again, one of the verses of the poem was it said that, no, en el tiempo del hombre, and that was interesting, so I chose this. I mean, it was me choosing the name, no? And I sort of curated, one could say that I curated the album from this artificial intelligence entity. So I picked up this phrase, El Tiempo del Hombre, and that was the name of the album, no? So when you can see in the video, you can see me burying the time of man. That's a sort of inner joke. So yes, I'll share this with you now. Okay, I'm having a bit of problems now. If you can wait a second.
Suficientes por el cerdo, el mago, bien, fui entonces. Y si me tenés más puedo decirlo así, que representan desde designados o que se presentazas, no desempeñas pero en el octavo del tanta moneda están dale, que carreta, basta, carreta, resiliente, era de desideración hacia
presentan les demos. El poema es de ejemplo en las dos cosas. Un pushing vibration que yes, yes. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't know if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Paula. So, yeah, we have some students here, and I don't know if they have some questions. Let's see.
Hi, that was a really interesting presentation. Thanks so much for showing us what you do, especially because it sort of incorporates AI and it's kind of coding this performance too. I found that to be really interesting. I hope I didn't miss it somewhere in the presentation. I remember in the very beginning you're talking about maybe something to do with the harmonics of how you put things together. I noticed in the first performance that we saw on your YouTube live, it was very like lots and lots of sounds from a whole bunch of like almost like different notes, but they all sounded like they worked together harmonically. So like what's your sort of process in terms of, I guess, like not necessarily chord structures, but just getting the harmonics to like work together that way?
Recently I was commenting, they were interviewing me, and I was saying that I was in a way the dream of the futurists. You remember this art movement at the start of the 20th century? So there was this there's this portion of this movement that was also very interested in sound, right? And there's a manifesto related to this, and actually in this manifesto is proposed that ideally one person should be free from the academia, the conservatories of music, of just completely free from all of these structures of what it is assumed that one makes one either a composer or a musician, no? So I would say that the fact that this works together is based on, let's say, like, intuition, luck. I don't know how to put it. It wasn't intentional. I started, I had this hypothesis, let's say, a sort of idea that I was playing before all of this happened. No, that it was I wonder if one starts making one's own instruments, if, by like this sort of coming from the do-it-yourself movement. No, if I start making these devices, and at the same time I learn how they work, because what is curious in this process is that first I came up with the devices, and then I learned how to play them. It wasn't the other way around. It was like the opposite of what usually happens. So first I came up with them, and then I realized that I could play them live, and that they were working as instruments. And then I came up with, how do I play them? And in what way these devices make you think differently about performing music, no? In the sense that usually guitar you play the strings, in the with the flute you play it in such a way, etc. But in this case, for example, in the case of the Chipivo con Ivo textile, you need to rub the textile, no? You need to touch it in a certain way, and in this case you need to grab the chords like this. So it's a completely different way as well to play, no? So I think the harmonies come most from the type of sounds that I've chosen. That being it because I was attracted to them out of them being harmonious by themselves, and it's in the case of in this case of the kipu, it's a bit more. I mean, since I already used something, I already used this polyphonic composition that was harmonious in itself. Then maybe it was a bit easy, the type of the segments that I used, the samples that I used, made it harmonious by itself. In the case of the sounds used for the Chipivo Conivo textile, there also the voices is based. I mean, the voices are Auristela was singing traditional songs from the Chipivo Conivo, and it sort of worked together. I can't tell you about a system that I used for this. I not consciously, at least, and I think that's and maybe it's interesting to think about what happens when actually you start the other way around, and you start having control on the you start by first yeah, but they're not really sampled from the same song. There are many songs. I mean, in the case of this one, yeah, it's a bits of a song, not since it's a voice. yeah, no, but it's okay. It's good because it's there's so much to explain that I might miss something. No, in the case of the kipu, yeah, the type of, since it's baroque, since it's a voice like a female voice, it's easier, for it to be harmonic. But in this case, it also has very, I would say, non-harmonic sounds, because you can see there's this howler, this it's a monkey that lives in the Amazon rainforest, that has this very deep sound, that it sounds a bit like maybe like dark ambient, but it's not harmonious per se, but somehow it works. One wonders if, okay, maybe the environment does influence us, in the sense that maybe these songs, out of having been out of the people that live there, came up with these songs in the environment, somehow works well with the sounds from the environment itself. I know one could analyze it that way, but in any case, no, it's it was kind of maybe out of luck, maybe out of some subconscious process in which I was inclined to harmonies, and again, these harmonies are distorted, with this other device, so it shifts. But the harmonious part, yeah, no, I wasn't consciously at least planning something, or did anything that is even close to music notation.
Right. I think it's so. Thank you. I think it's so interesting that I think just because, at least in my perspective, the sound is so unique, and the way it comes together is so unique that even like regardless of whether harmonics were like intentionally used or not, it just feels right. And actually, this is my second thing is not necessarily a question, but just more just a comment. I really like that idea of instead of because like I played cello, but I learned what the cello was, and then I figured out how to use the sounds. In the case of something like this textiles, it's making the instrument and then figuring out what the sounds are.
Yes.
Which reminds me just so much of I think a interview that I saw with like Hans Zimmer, right? That composes
Yes.
a bunch of these kind
Yes.
of interstellar,
Yeah, of course, yeah.
kind of epics, and how he just talks about how his favorite thing, or even like Ludwig Göransson does movie scores, and how their favorite thing to do is just kind of find new instruments, make up new instruments, and then go from there to like have a certain feel for a movie. And I maybe just think that the sort of performance that you do is also, it's so visual.
Yes.
That I can see it working so well in like feature films also.
Soon I'm doing my first soundtrack. I don't know how that will work, because I never know. For me, this is still new, no? But yeah, soon I'm going to do for a small, very short art film, actually, like a video art, one would say. But yeah, soon I'll soon enter into that arena. Let's hope it works good as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm honestly not even surprised. Is there like a link or something like that we can follow the brothers?
Yes, I can share this. Maybe in, well, I don't know if right now, because I have, the thing is that I have this page. I can share it. Wait, where's the? Oh, maybe I can leave the links later on.
Sure, that'd be great.
Yes, because I need to. They're kind of all over the place, and I have this page that is that says the one more link to sound, but still the more recent things that are exclusively sound, that are not even related to performance itself, are so new. I've done them so recently that they are not updated in that page. So maybe I can share this, and then it can be passed to you. You can share it to Luis. Yes.
That'd be fantastic. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, thank you. Are there any more questions, or you're already destroyed tired?
I had a quick question.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if you mentioned it, but I was wondering if these performances are with the tactile devices, if they're improvised or if they're planned in some form. So yeah, I'm wondering about that.
Yes. No, I don't. Actually, I don't plan. It's rarely rare that I plan anything. No, I've the sounds that you. I mean, the performance, the complete performance that you saw on the start in the video, it has been taking shape. It took some time until of me performing live, because first it was the Chipivo Contigo textile that I came up with, and actually these pieces I developed them thinking of them being interactive pieces for a gallery space. I didn't start thinking about them as musical instruments. I mean, not consciously, at least. So afterwards, after I saw the interaction of people with them, I realized that I was doing that. And then I wonder what would happen if I play them live, and in what way they change also, and my link to them, my relation to them changes, no? So first I just started playing the Chipivo Conego live, and then the reception of people was great. People were gratefully surprised by what I was doing. So then I developed this other piece, the Kipum. At first I wasn't thinking to play it live either, and then I realized that it worked together well. And then the third piece, yes, I made it thinking as for live performances related to these other pieces, to this other, you see, I still call them pieces, to these other textile controllers. So there's this interesting question as well, no, related to context, how they change depending on how I present them. So for me, yes, still in my head they are artworks, they are artwork, pieces. But I prefer, to present them as textile controllers in the context of sound, because it's a bit strange. They're in a limit. They're in the limit of that. They can be various things as well. It's kind of complex. So yes, I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. Thanks for your time also.
Are there any more questions, or?
I have a question. So
Yes.
I was wondering if you can, let me see, because I put here my question. Yeah, okay. So, because I found very interesting that you are talking about, well, if I understood correctly, the textiles that, so there are theories, I think you were saying, that say that these textiles could be sound.
Could be linked to sound, yeah.
And I was wondering if tell us if you how do you think about sound? Because like for instance for this course we have been working with like these two main ways of thinking sound, which is the recorded sound or the samples and the synthesized sound. And I was like I've been interested in why we only have those two ways of thinking. I don't know what do you think?
Well, personally, I have a very visual approach to sound, and that's I think because of my painting background. And I wasn't aware of it until recently, and actually, this painting is very related to it's related to that. But I guess I could. I mean, I have a certain way of visualizing sound that is related to color and to movement and to places in a space. So like a spatialized view of sound. Um, I think this has to do with the fact that I had basically no formal music training. I mean, I've had in school, yeah, and when I was in high school, no, and primary school, maybe I had some, but I didn't pursue it. So if I read any musical notation, it's slow or I don't remember it at all. I mean, and at this point, I don't want to. I mean, I feel that this detachment that I have from this more formal theory of music is good. But of course, I'm aware of the different currents in music and in sound related to art. So I can't say that I'm completely free, no. But the visual part, I think it, and the specialized that the space related part. I don't know if that's exactly related to what you were saying. In any case, I would think that I'm interested in the in between of the two things that you mentioned. You know, yes, this let's say, especially with the synthesized voice, one, it looks so real in a way that it makes you question also what you're classifying as what. I mean, these new AI systems will surely kind of move these definitions a bit, no? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes, thank you so much. So I don't know if anyone has another question. Okay, so I think that were all the questions.
Yes,
So,
no, thank you for the last ones that resisted. Because it was a bit.
no, but don't worry. As I was telling you, this like people see it afterwards because we have some students who are also in different places with different time zones,
Yes,
so
yes.
it's also difficult. But this
Sure.
will be I will share the recording with them
Yes.
so they can watch it.
Okay, great. Just check that in the YouTube recording, if I haven't made some mistake with the sound, if maybe some parts it wasn't being heard in YouTube, I don't know, because again I need to control, plus while I was talking, I need to control the this streaming system. So I don't know if I've made some mistake. I hope not. But yes.
Yeah, no, I think everything was great, and but I will check.
Okay.
I will check, and I think this is also very useful because some of our classmates they stream as well. So yeah,
Okay.
streaming it's involves a lot of tasks.
Yes.
So
Yes.
we are doing Zoom as well.
Yes, Zoom plus streaming plus passing videos. I mean, I'm using OBS, no, which again it's really good for this, but yeah, you need to concentrate so not to make mistakes.
Well, thank you so much, Paola.
Thank you so
once
much
again,
for the invitation.
and thank you to all keep watching afterwards, and I guess we'll see you soon. We'll see you next, next week, as usual. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye. Thank you. Bye. Bye.
See you later.
Bye. Bye.